All right, let's get wild. Time for another edition of The Political Animal. Joining us today, Republican strategist and Georgetown University professor Bradley Blakeman. Also with us, Franco Ripple, Democratic media strategist at Cate Comm. It's great to have you both with us. Franco, let's start with you. President Obama now apparently closer than many had thought to doing some sort of executive action on gun control. Obviously, his presidency, some would classify as a little bit divisive at this point, but this might be one of the most divisive issues yet. Don't you, as a Democrat, worry about the repercussions that this might have if Hillary Clinton is to become the next president of the United States? Don't you think there'll be some blowback? Pardon the pun.
Well, John, what I know I'm supposed to address here is the political blowback of it, to continue the pun. But what I worry more about is the continued slate of gun deaths in America and mass shootings. Again,
Franco, everybody's concerned about that, but don't you think you need buy-in from members of Congress to get anything really done? This seems more symbolic than anything else, just passing these executive actions.
It's not so much symbolic. There are some real things that you can do. And yes, let's be clear. I think we can both agree there are to get a lot of significant things done on this issue, you do need congressional action. I don't think there's any chance of that happening anytime in the near future whatsoever. So I think that the president has to look at what he can do. He has told his advisors he wants action on this before the end of his term. And I think some of the things that they're floating, like having folks on the no-fly list, have a closer look taken at them for buying guns.
Again, that's also a symbolic thing. We know the no-fly list is flawed, and that's something that they think people can latch onto as a good idea.
But the guns show loophole. Also, the guns show loophole. I mean,
you might have something there. Bradley, jump in on this. President Obama wants to get something done, but again, do you think this might be some symbolism here? We're talking about the Constitution, the Second Amendment, and without real buy-in from Congress, anything that you pass is going to be symbolic. Do you agree?
Look, of course. Look, the president's modus operandi is pretty clear. If you don't like what I'm doing, sue me. And we do. We sue you on health care. We sue you on everything that you refuse to do by the letter of the law, and that is act within the purview of your authority. Go to Congress. It takes three to tango in Washington. It takes the executive branch, the judicial, and the legislative. Why are you throwing the legislative branch under the bus? Why don't you work with them? Why don't you craft a bill, Mr. President? Why don't you work with even your own leadership to craft a bill? Obama, in 7 years, has no relationship with even his own people on the Hill. Because if he did, he'd be calling them down to the White House. He'd be calling our new speaker, who did a fantastic job of wrapping up this year without a government shutdown and compromised. But the president picks up his pen and his phone before he talks to his own members or members of the opposition who are now in the majority.
Terrible relationship with Congress may be his biggest flaw. And I don't want to let Paul Ryan off the hook. We'll talk about that in a second. But I want to move on to this love fest, this bromance going on currently between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Trump was on MSNBC's Morning Joe this morning, returning the compliment. Let's take a listen.
When people call you brilliant, it's always good, especially when the person heads up Russia.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, also as a person that kills journalists, political opponents, and
invades countries.
And invades countries. Obviously, that it would be a concern, would it not?
He's running his country, and at least he's a leader. Unlike what we have in this country.
I don't know about this. This kind of rubs me the wrong way. President Obama, you may not like him, but he is the president of the U.S. Vladimir Putin, certainly no example of good leadership, at least in these United States. Franco, you had to love this moment.
No class, no grace from Donald Trump, but also to be expected by this point. And frankly, this kind of stuff only emboldens his base. When they hear stuff like this, and I can't understand why, because Vladimir Putin is a communist. So are Republican primary voters aligned with Donald Trump now saying they'd love to see a communist as president? I don't know. Donald Trump's been every party, everything in between. Maybe he's a communist. I don't know. But the point is, Vladimir Putin is someone who murders journalists. He murders his own citizens for being gay or lesbian. He murders his opponents. Is that what Donald Trump likes? Is that what he'd like to see here? We have elections in this country, and they don't have them in Russia, and clearly it's for a reason.
But Bradley, you've been around the Republican Party a long time. You know this, and we've seen this phenomenon with Trump. You know this is not going to do anything to hurt him. It might even help him as we get closer to Iowa.
Well, let's see, because in my opinion, Trump appeals to a super minority of the Republican voter base. Now, his national polls may be high, But until somebody actually goes into a caucus room with their friends and neighbors, or goes to a secret ballot, which is going to be the first one in Iowa, that's when the polls really matter. Right now, he's winning nothing. Maybe a popularity contest, but those don't determine who actually the winners of elections are. So the jury is out for me until Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, and then we'll get a good idea as to this Trump phenomenon, whether it's real or not.
Well, we'll see. When those folks have to stand up in those Iowa caucuses and actually put their name on it in front of their neighbors, we'll see what happens. Now, Franco, I want to talk about your party a little bit. Bernie Sanders' campaign says they are holding the voter information hostage because apparently someone hacked in to the voter information. The Sanders campaign says this was because it was vulnerable from the get-go, not their responsibility. Hillary Clinton's campaign probably would have done the same thing if they were in the same situation, but I doubt the punishment would have been the same. This is an effort from Debbie Wasserman Schultz to give an even bigger advantage to Hillary Clinton. Come on.
No, actually, and I can really speak to this with some authority, having used NGP van software for going on a decade now in presidential campaigns, local races, municipal, and so on. No, I don't think the problem was actually with the candidates. I don't think the problem was with the campaign staff, although if they understand they have that
access. They've been let go, and the punishment continues.
They've been let go, and maybe they shouldn't have done it, but the problem is with van software. I can tell you it's rife with issues, and it's all we've got on our side. So I hope the technology improves.
You know, this opened a huge door for Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She had to have been secretly celebrating when she found this out. Gives her a real reason to do this. Unfortunately, gentlemen, we had so much to talk about, but we are out of time. I want to thank you both for being with us. Franco Ripple and Bradley Blakeman, a pleasure as always, gentlemen. Much more to come here on Hardline. John Bachman in for Ed Berliner today. Stick around.